Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. I got a big old sack of the good shit for you tonight, folks. Some real good stuff coming in today. One of my favorite topics is energy production. Anybody who listens to the show will tell you that I'm obsessed with producing energy cheap and green and things to kind of need it. As we move forward in technology, the amount of energy per citizen that we consume is just going to continue to skyrocket, and we can't just continue to dig fossil fuels and carbon fuels out of the ground and keep up. Eventually, we're going to run out of space. And so this kind of comes in on that front. This is from physics, from Science Alert in their physics section. It says, researchers just demonstrated nuclear fusion in a device small enough to keep it at home. When it comes to this kind of technology, the kinds of technology needed to contain a sun, there are currently just two horses in the race. Neither is what you would call petite. An earlier form of fusion technology that barely made it out of the starting blocks has just overcome a serious hurdle. It's got a long way to catch up, but given its potential, cost, and versatility, a table-sized fusion device like this is worth watching out for. And this concept of being able to decentralize energy production is kind of a big deal. People have been talking about this for a really long time. And the idea of being able to have everyone, either a small centralized type of energy production, let's say like per city kind of thing, or even down to the point of being able to do it from your home. What it does is it just makes the grid much more stable and removes the necessity for a grid per se. While many have long given up on early form of plasma confinement called the Z-pinch as a feasible way to generate power, researchers at the University of Washington in the U.S. have continued to look for a way to overcome its shortcomings. Fusion power relies on clouds of charged particles you can squeeze the literal daylight out of. It's the reaction that powers that big ball of hot gas we call the sun. But containing a buzzing mix of superhot ions is extremely challenging. In the lab, scientists use intense magnetic fields for this task. That's with the super magnets and all that kind of stuff. Tokamaks, like China's experimental advanced superconducting tokamak reactor, swirl their insanely hot plasma in such a way that they generate their own internal magnetic fields, helping contain the flow. This approach gets the plasma cooking enough for it to release a critical amount of energy, but what it gains in generating heat, it loses in long-term stability. Stellarators like Germany's Wendelstein 7X, on the other hand, rely more heavily on banks of externally applied magnetic fields. While this makes for better control over the plasma, it also makes it harder to reach the temperatures needed for fusion to occur. Both are making serious headway in our march towards fusion power, but those donuts holding the plasma are at least a few meters, a dozen feet across, surrounded by complex banks of delicate electronics, making it unlikely we will see them shrink to a home or mobile version anytime soon. In the early days of fusion research, a somewhat simpler method of squeezing a jet of plasma was to pinch it through a magnetic field. A relatively small device known as a zeta or Z-pinch uses the specific orientation of a plasma internal magnetic field to apply what's known as the Lorentz force to the flow of particles, effectively forcing its particles together through a bottleneck. In some sense, the device isn't unlike a miniature version of its tokamak big brother. As such, it also suffers from similar stability issues that can cause its plasma to jump from the magnetic tracks and crash into the sides of the container. In fact, iterations of the Z-pinch led to the chunky tomahawk technology that superseded it. Given this major limitation, the Z-pinch has all but become a relic of history. Hope remains that by going back to the roots of fusion, researchers might find a way to generate power without the need for complicated banks of surrounding machinery and magnets. Now, researchers from the University of Washington have found an alternative approach to stabilizing the plasma, and a Z-pinch not only works, but it can be used to generate a burst of fusion. To prevent the distortions in the plasma that causes it to escape the confines of its magnetic cage, the team manages the flow of the particles by applying a bit of fluid dynamics. This is some cool shit. This is like straight, super villain out of Marvel kind of stuff. Introducing what is known as sheared axial flow to a short column of plasma has previously been studied as a potential way to improve stability in a Z-pinch to rather limited effect. Not to be deterred, physicists relied on computer simulations to show the concept was possible. Using a mix of 20% deuterium and 80% hydrogen, the team managed to hold stable a 50 centimeter, or about a 1.5 foot long column of plasma, enough to achieve fusion, evidenced by a signature generation of neutrons being emitted. Yeah. We're only talking 5 microseconds worth of neutrons here, so don't clear space in your basement for your Z-Pinch 3000 home fusion box quite yet. But the stability was 5,000 times longer than you would expect without such a method being used. Showing the principle is ripe for further study. Ooh, game changer. Generating clean, abundant fusion energy is still a dream we're all holding on to. A new approach to a less complex form of plasma technology could help remove at least some of the obstacles, if not prove to be cheaper, more compact source of clean power in its own right. The race towards the horizon of limitless energy production is only just warming up, folks, and it really can't come soon enough. So this is a big freaking deal. This is a kind of a reboot of an older technology is what it sounds like, but they're going to take and look into it further. And it's, it's still probably a decade or so, if not decades, away from being something that we're going to actually be able to get electricity from in our homes and places of business and stuff. But in the interim, there's other technologies too. If you get the chance, I would highly recommend you check out the documentary called Pandora's Box. I think it's on Netflix still, and if it's not, just Google it, you'll find it. But when you actually start taking a look at the data, especially when you get into the 3rd and 4th generation thorium salts reactors and some of the different technologies that have been invented since we used the breeder style reactors, there's been some major improvements in stability and safety. So, but like I said, check out that documentary if you get a chance. We're definitely gonna have to move to the nuclear scale sooner than later, hopefully. But there's options out there already, even in fission reaction, that are a lot better than burning, coal and oil and different stuff. It's even safer than. It's crazy. It's even safer than solar and wind when you look at the actual data. It's nuts. Let's see here. Scientists treat first U.S. patients with gene-edited cells. Here comes the crazy, right? This is when we start getting into people, designer babies and that kind of stuff. CRISPR-Cas9, the powerful gene editing tool, has been getting a bad reputation lately following last year's shocking news of Chinese twins born with altered genomes. But done diligently and ethically, there's a big word, CRISPR holds the promise to treat some of the most gruesome diseases. At the University of Pennsylvania, scientists have used this technology to make precise DNA modifications to the immune cells of 2 cancer patients. The ongoing trial marks the first time that CRISPR has been used to treat patients on U.S. soil. One of the patients has myeloma, and the other has sarcoma. Both didn't respond to standard treatment, which is why they agreed to participate in an experimental trial. CRISPR-Cas9 allows scientists to alter the DNA, where are we at here, of different organisms with high speed and precision. It essentially works by injecting a living organism with a DNA construct composed of the Cas9 enzyme that cuts or deletes a segment of the DNA, a sequence of RNA that guides the Cas9 to the correct location to cut, and a new DNA template that repairs the cut and alters the gene. Wow, it sounds like an awful lot of shit going on. But CRISPR entered the picture, gene editing, but before CRISPR entered the picture, gene editing was a time-consuming and laborious procedure that often ended in failure. The ongoing trial involves extracting immune cells, known as T cells, from the blood of the patients, then genetically modifying these cells. The plan is to remove three of the cell's receptors and to add a gene for a receptor called an NY-ESO-1, which is a protein that appears on the surface of some cancers. The modified cells would then be infused into the bodies of the cancer patients after they had received a brief course of chemotherapy. Ooh, I don't know. This stuff sounds crazy. I don't know. I guess well, if someone's already kind of staring down the barrel of not having any other options, I don't know what hurts. And it's certainly good for research and science and things like that. So I guess it should just be up to the person. Ultimately, the researchers hope that the modified cells will target and destroy the cancer cells. So far, no other information has been released to the public, but we know that the study will eventually include a total of 18 patients. So this is happening. Unlike the reckless Chinese experiment that edited the genes of human embryos, the trial involves altering the DNA of individual patients. This means that these modifications will not be passed down the germline, which is, I guess that's a good thing. You start changing DNA and then start handing it down through procreation. God, that could get crazy. So there's no danger of re-engineering the entire human species. Gene editing of heritable traits is not allowed in the United States and in many other countries. Besides the trial, a number of research institutes have started or are preparing to start their own CRISPR trials on human patients this year. NPR informs that 2 trials are underway meant to treat genetic blood disorders such as sickle cell disease and some others. Another study wants to use CRISPR to treat an inherited form of blindness known as Leber congenital amaurosis. Several other cancer studies are due to kick off this year in Texas, New York, and elsewhere. It's crazy, right? Because we're going to end up getting to a point here where you walk into, I don't know, what would be considered a pharmacy, maybe give a blood sample or something like that, and then you come back the next day and they give you an injection, and that one injection like cures everything. It's like full-blown, tricorder kind of shit. All of these studies are extremely experimental, and the patients involved in them face considerable risks. The biggest concern is that these therapies might cause unintended changes in DNA that could lead to health problems or zombies. And even if these preliminary trials are deemed successful, it might take many years before the public gains access to them. Again, that's where it goes back to that. If you got nothing to lose, you should have the right to say, hey, I want to look at the data and then make a decision. Moving to Russia, geophysicists tracking the Earth's magnetic field say that the pole is slipping into Siberian territory. This comes from Maclean's. Sorry, Neil. You're going to lose the North Pole, man. No more Santa Claus and all that fun shit up there for you guys, you crazy Canadian. For the first time since it was discovered on the North American mainland, the magnetic North Pole is heading into Siberian territory. Geophysicists who use satellite data to track the machinations of the Earth's magnetic field say that the pole is moving extraordinarily fast, galloping across the Arctic archipelago, so swiftly that earlier this year, its speed forced scientists to recalculate magnetic models earlier than they had planned. The magnetic North Pole is the one spot on the top of the planet where the Earth's magnetic field lines converge and drive straight into its core. The core, made of a solid inner part and a molten metallic outer part, continually creates the planet's vast and changeable magnetic field as it sheds heat stored there since the planet's birth. Maritime and airplane navigation, defense systems, and even smartphones depend on accurate magnetic readings. The cavorting magnetic North Pole has made that tricky for decades, but despite its rapid movement, it has remained in Canadian territory until now. While geophysicists can't say for sure when the pole will be in the Russian territory because it's hard to pinpoint the geographic claims there, they say its Siberian trajectory is unstoppable. That's happening because of a tug of war between two unusually strong magnetic patches in the outer core, says Phil Livermore, director of the Institute of Geophysics and Tectonics at the University of Leeds. One patch is under Canada, the other is beneath Siberia. The magnetic North Pole has historically been in Canada because our country has won the molten push-pull contest, but not now. Something's changed, and now Siberia is winning, Livermore says, explaining that the patch under Canada is being thinned out like a smear, elongated and weakened by separate fierce jet of magnetism in the core. For centuries, the magnetic North Pole has been a key geographic prize. Finding it was a central goal of the so-called magnetic crusade that obsessed scientists and navigators in the 18th and 19th centuries as they raced to understand the mysterious invisible force that moves the compass. Finally, on June 1st of 1831, the Arctic sailor and explorer James Clark Ross set up camp in some abandoned Inuit ice huts on the Boothia Peninsula. Boothia, I bet that's how it's pronounced. On the mainland of what is now Canada, and pinpointed the magnetic North Pole for the first time. Ross, who named the peninsula after Felix Booth, Boothia, the wealthy British gin distiller who had financed his expedition, claimed the find for Britain and was knighted. See, and people say nothing good ever comes from alcohol. The magnetic North Pole remains laden with symbolism, says John Geiger, chief executive of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society and Arctic scholar. Russia is prone to, quote, chest thumping over any geographic prize, he says, and may do that over gaining this one. It's being a little petty. Whatever. But sucks to be you, Canada. Well, I guess it doesn't suck. Your compasses and shit are all going to have to change. So that's going to be a problem. This comes from ZME Science. Scientists create artificial material capable of metabolizing, self-assembly, movement, and organization, the key traits of life. This is a little creepy, huh? I've seen this, and it's like, at what point does this become life? Like, where do you classify it that? What makes something alive? Is it the fact that it has a metabolism, that it can organize itself into coherent structure? If that's all it takes, then researchers might have just created artificial life. A Cornell team took advantage of some of DNA's unique properties to develop a lifelike material that can self-organize, self-assemble, and even metabolize nutrients. Quote, "We are introducing a brand new lifelike material concept powered by its own artificial metabolism. We are not making something that's alive, but we are creating materials that are much more lifelike than have ever been seen before," said Dan Lau, professor of biological and environmental engineering at the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. DNA is the foundation of all life on Earth. It contains the instructions needed for an organism to survive and develop, producing new cells and sweeping old ones away in a hierarchical pattern. However, DNA is also a polymer. Who knew? Meaning it has some useful bioconstruction properties that researchers can use. In this study, Lau and colleagues use what they call DASH, DNA-based assembly and synthesis of hierarchical, say that 10 times fast, materials to create a biomaterial that can autonomously emerge from its nanoscale building blocks and arrange itself. First into simple polymers, then into more complex shapes. That sounds awful like crawling out of the primordial ooze kind of shit to me, but they started from a sequence of 55 nucleotides, the building blocks of DNA and RNA, and from there the DNA molecules were multiplied hundreds of thousands of times, creating chains of repeating DNA reaching a few millimeters in size. Then this reaction was injected into microfluidic device that the necessary energy and materials for biosynthesis. As material gathered more and more resources, the DNA was able to synthesize new strands at the front end, while the tail end degraded to maintain an optimum balance. Using this mechanism, it was also able to move around. What the fuck? Even against the flow, very similar to how slime molds move. Quote, the designs are still primitive, but they showed a new route to create dynamic machines from biomolecules. We are at a first step of building life like robots by artificial metabolism. They're going to freaking grow robots. Said some dude, Shogo Hamada, lecturer and research associate in the Lau Lab, and led by co-corresponding authors of the paper. Even from a simple design, we were able to create sophisticated behaviors like racing. Oh, they're going to make them fucking competitive too. Great. Artificial metabolisms could open a new frontier in robotics. Yeah, it could. If that wasn't lifelike enough, researchers are currently working on ways to improve longevity and self-replication. Yeah, fucking A. Let's just make it figure out how to mass produce itself. Quote, dynamic biomaterials powered by artificial metabolism could provide a previously unexplored route to realize, quote, artificial biological systems with regenerating and self-sustaining characteristics, the study concludes. The goal is not to produce artificial life, but rather to use the system as a biosensor or as a dynamic template for making proteins without living cells. Yeah. Best laid plans, right? I don't know. That one creeps me the fuck out. I don't know where to go with that other than, boy, it's going to be interesting. This is from All Story, and I'm going to just leave this up here without much comment. Scientists have established a link between religious fundamentalism and brain damage. Yeah. A study published by the Journal of Neuropsychology has shown that religious fundamentalism is, in part, the result of a functional impairment in a brain region known as the prefrontal cortex. The findings suggest that damage to particular areas of the prefrontal cortex indirectly promotes religious fundamentalism by diminishing cognitive flexibility and openness, a psychology term that describes a personality trait which involves dimensions like curiosity, creativity, and open-mindedness. Religious beliefs can be thought of as socially transmitted mental representations that consist of supernatural events and entities assumed to be real. Yep. Religious beliefs differ from empirical beliefs, which are based on how the world appears to be and are updated as new evidence accumulates, or when new theories with better predictive power emerge. On the other hand, religious beliefs are not usually updated in response to new evidence or scientific explanations, and are therefore strongly associated with conservatism. They are fixed and rigid, which helps promote predictability and coherence to the rules of society among individuals within the group. Religious fundamentalism refers to an ideology that emphasizes traditional religious texts and rituals and discourages progressive thinking about religion and social issues. Fundamentalist groups generally oppose anything that questions or challenges their beliefs or way of life. For this reason, they are often aggressive towards anyone who does not share their specific set of supernatural beliefs and towards science, as these things are seen as existential threats to their entire world view. So scientists have restored the circulation to severed pig brains in a step that blurs the definition of death. Yeah, that's a fun article, huh? This comes from Technology Review. A team led by Neenand Seston report in Nature Today how they've been picking up severed pig heads from a New Haven slaughterhouse and trying to restore circulation to them a few hours after death. That sounds very, Frankenstein-y. The experiments were successful in keeping many of the cells inside the brains alive and functioning for more than a day. MIT Technology Review first reported the pig brain experiments in April of 2018. Seston says, while the brain cells lived, the team did not detect organized electrical signaling from neurons. That would have suggested the disembodied brains had regained consciousness. An ethicist involved in the study said during a conference call with reporters that if there had been evidence of consciousness, the studies would have been stopped immediately. Seston insists that the brains are, quote, not alive. The researchers employed a device they built and called Brain X, which reestablishes circulation of oxygen-carrying fluids to the brain, including their small blood vessels, using a series of pumps, filters, and surgical connections. Oh, it's like from Futurama. Doctors can declare a person deceased a few minutes after the heart stops, sometimes quickly harvesting the heart and kidneys for others, but this technology could blur the definition of death. Quote, if technologies similar to Brain X are improved and developed for use in humans, people who are declared brain dead could become candidates for brain resurrection rather than organ donation, wrote Stuart Younger and Enso Hoyne, bioethicists at Case Western University. Bioethicists at Case Western University. Yeah, technology just screwing all kinds of shit up, isn't it? Blurring lines. What are you going to do? Last but not least, this comes from CNBC. Facebook is working on a voice assistant to rival Amazon, Alexa, and Apple Siri. You didn't think I was going to do a podcast without talking about Facebook at least a little bit, right? That's what I do. Facebook is working on a voice assistant to revival the likes of Amazon's Alexa, Apple, Siri, and Google Assistant, according to several people familiar with the matter. The tech company has been working on this new initiative since early 2018. The effort is coming out of the company's augmented reality and virtual reality group, a division that works on hardware, including the company's virtual reality Oculus headsets. A team based out of Redmond, Washington, has been spearheading the effort to build the new AI assistant, according to two former Facebook employees who left the company in recent months. The effort is being led by Ira Snyder, director of AR, VR, and Facebook Assistant. The team has been contacting vendors in the smart speaker supply chain, according to two people familiar. It's unclear how exactly Facebook envisions people using the assistant, but it could potentially be on the company's portal video, chat, smart speakers, the Oculus headsets, or future other products. Oh, that's going to be so phenomenal, isn't it? When someone can just holler at their Facebook assistant to post some trashy bullshit for them on Facebook. We'll get Elon Musk's Neuralink, and then it'll just do it straight from your brain. You won't even have to type. The Facebook Assistant faces stiff competition. Amazon and Google are far ahead in the smart speaker market with 67%, 30% shares in the U.S. in 2018, respectively, according to eMarketer. In 2015, Facebook released an AI assistant for its messenger app called M. It did. It was supposed to help users with smart suggestions, but the project depended heavily on the help of humans and never gained traction. Facebook killed the project last year. Oh. The company in November began selling its Portal video chat device, which lets users place video calls using Facebook Messenger. Users can say, "Hey, Portal," to initiative very simple commands. That's a weird way to put it. To initiate, not initiative, to initiate very simple commands, but the device also comes equipped with Amazon's Alexa Assistant to handle more complex tasks. So there's creepy Facebook update for you. Other than that, folks, it was a lot of fun doing this update. Like I said, a lot of good information came out today. Make sure you check us out over at www.noshitcast.com. Maybe you guys don't know, but we also have a YouTube presence. And if you go to our website, you can find links to all the places where you can watch or listen to the show. And keep hitting those like and subscribe buttons out there. We're super close at YouTube. We just need a couple more, and I'll be able to get my custom YouTube URL over there. Show, like I said, just continues to grow like crazy, and I appreciate all the likes and the feedback and everything, folks. And we'll catch you next time. Bye, Sickles.